This looks amazing. Best in the galaxy. Go on, try it.
Wow, delicious.
Glad you like it.
The first thing the alien cubs noticed about Earth was the smell. It drifted up through the ventilation shafts of the diplomatic landing craft, slipped through sterilized filters, and curled into their sensitive nasal fronds like an invitation, warm, spiced, alive. Is that combustion? Squeaked Teary, the smallest of the cubs, her 4 ears twitching in alarm. No, replied Kova, who had studied the human cultural archives for nearly 3 full rotations. It is cooking. The word hung in the air like a sacred concept. Below them, on a dusty street corner in a city called San Esperanza, a human food truck painted in bright yellows and reds sizzled under the afternoon sun. A metal grill crackled. Meat roasted, flatbread warmed. The scent of grilled beef, caramelized onions, and roasted peppers drifted toward the sky. The cubs pressed their translucent faces to the observation screen. They are performing a thermal ritual, whispered Teary. They call it lunch, Kova corrected. Official first contact was supposed to be held in a sterile white chamber inside the United Nations orbital facility. There would be speeches, carefully calibrated atmospheres, pre-approved gestures of goodwill. But the cubs were not diplomats. They were offspring of the high exploration fleet brought along for educational purposes. Their species, the Virellians, believed that curiosity was the purest form of intelligence. And right now, curiosity smelled like grilled tortillas. Commander. Yevrin turned from the navigation console and found 3 cubs missing. Again, the landing craft hatch was already open. Oh no. On Earth, Mateo Ramirez was having a normal Tuesday, which meant business was slow. He leaned against his food truck, El Sol Supremo, and flipped a strip of marinated carne asada on the grill. Oil popped. Smoke rose in a fragrant cloud. 2 burritos, called a construction worker from a folding chair. You got it, amigo, Mateo grinned. That's when the sky shimmered. At first, Mateo assumed it was heat distortion. Then a disc-shaped object unfolded itself out of nothing and gently lowered into the empty parking lot across the street. The construction workers froze mid-bite. The truck radio cut to static. Mateo blinked once, then twice. The side hatch of the craft opened with a soft humph, and 3 small, round, 4-eared, lavender-colored creatures tumbled out. They stared at him. He stared at them. One of them sniffed, very loudly. Teary's eyes went wide. The source of the thermal ritual. Kova stepped forward with all the dignity a knee-high alien fluffball could muster. Greetings, culinary technician of Terra. Mateo lowered his spatula slowly. You want a burrito? The cubs gasped in synchronized delight. Humans would later say that first contact began not with a handshake, but with foil. Mateo wrapped the burrito with careful hands. He didn't know if aliens had allergies, or digestive tracts, or exploding reactions to cilantro. But he knew hospitality. Okay, he said gently, kneeling so he didn't tower over them. It's beef rice, beans, cheese. Not too spicy. Kova accepted it with trembling claws. The foil crinkled, steam rose. Teary leaned in and inhaled so deeply she nearly tipped over. It smells like joy, she whispered. They took a bite. And the universe changed. In orbit, Commander Yevrin was already preparing apologies to Earth leadership when his communication panel lit up with frantic signals. Surface visual feed activated. On screen, 3 Virellian cubs sat cross-legged on human asphalt, sharing a burrito and making small delighted chirping sounds. A human male in a flour-dusted apron sat beside them, explaining something with animated gestures. Yevrin stared. The diplomatic crisis, he feared, did not appear to be happening. Instead, one of the cubs tugged on Mateo's sleeve. What is the structural integrity of this edible containment wrap? Kova asked. Mateo blinked. Tortilla? It is magnificent, Teary declared, bits of rice clinging to her whiskers. Flexible yet resilient. Warm yet stable. The construction workers had slowly approached. One was filming on his phone. You're telling me, the man muttered. Aliens traveled across space. And the first thing they do is hit up a taco truck? Mateo shrugged. Can you blame them? Within the hour, news helicopters filled the sky. Within 2 hours, governments began shouting. Within 3, the UN demanded immediate transfer of the alien entities to secure facilities. But when armored vehicles approached, the cubs reacted with fear. They huddled behind Mateo's food truck. Yevron's voice crackled from hovering speakers. Please remain calm. The cubs are young, Mateo stepped forward instinctively, holding up both hands. They're just kids. He yelled at the soldiers, back up. And something remarkable happened. The soldiers hesitated because the cubs weren't analyzing weapons. They weren't scanning military data. They were pointing at the menu board. What is... Horchata? Terry asked through the translator. Mateo looked down at her, then at the line of armed humans, then back at the cub. He made a decision that historians would later call the Burrito Protocol. It's a drink, he said warmly. Rice milk, cinnamon, sweet. Terry's ears perked. We request additional sampling, Mateo grinned. Coming right up. When Commander Yevron finally descended to the surface personally, he expected chaos. Instead, he found a scene that defied centuries of interstellar caution doctrine. Humans and Virellian cubs sat together on folding chairs. The cubs were sticky with horchata foam. Mateo was explaining the concept of family recipes. A construction worker was attempting badly to pronounce Terry's name. Laughter rippled across species. Yevron approached slowly. You are the human responsible? He asked Mateo. Mateo wiped his hands on his apron. I guess so. You have violated at least 17 of your planet's first contact security protocols. Mateo winced. Sorry. Yevron studied him carefully. And yet, the commander continued, glancing at the cub's blissful expressions, you have accomplished something our diplomats have not. Mateo raised an eyebrow. Fed them? Demonstrated trust. Yevron looked up at the watching helicopters, the anxious soldiers, the shouting officials. Our species prepared speeches, he said. You offered food. Mateo shrugged again. Where I'm from, that's how you start. By nightfall, the world had changed. The official summit was postponed. Instead, a new meeting was scheduled public, open air, centered around shared meals. Chefs from 20 countries volunteered to cook. Virellian scientists eagerly requested cultural exchange through cuisine. The cubs, now mildly overfed and extremely happy, returned to their craft clutching a handwritten recipe for burritos. Terry looked back at Mateo one last time. Human Mateo, she chirped. Your species is unexpectedly wonderful. Mateo smiled softly. You're not so bad yourselves. As the ship lifted into the sky, Commander Yevron transmitted a final message to Eartha's leaders. Let it be recorded that the first successful act of interspecies diplomacy was not negotiation, but nourishment. Years later, historians would debate strategy, policy, and political impact. But among the Virellians, a simpler story endured. They told their young of the day they met humanity. They did not speak first of weapons, or technology, or power. They spoke of warmth. Of a small metal grill on a dusty street, of a human who knelt instead of standing tall, of soft bread wrapped around something delicious and shared freely. And in Virellian language, the word for earth became synonymous with a new concept, home of the open hand. And sometimes, when the stars were quiet, Terry would close her eyes and remember the taste of her first burrito, not as food, but as friendship. The Virellian High Council did not know what to do with the word guacamole. It appeared 17 times in the Cubs' official first contact report. Commander Yevron stood before the crystalline council chamber as holographic projections of Terry, Kova, and Little. Rel enthusiastically described the green paste of transcendent delight. A senior counselor blinked all 4 eyes in confusion. You are certain Earth is not attempting biochemical influence? Terry shook her head vigorously. Negative. A human Mateo specifically asked if we were allergic to avocados. The chamber fell silent. Allergic consideration. Pre-consumption consent. Shared seating at ground level. These were not the behaviors of a hostile predator species. They fed you before questioning you? Another counselor asked. Yes, Kova confirmed. And they laughed frequently, the counselors murmured. Laughter was not a known precursor to invasion. Commander Yevon folded his hands. Honored Council, I propose Phase 2 of contact. A hologram shifted to display a bold human phrase written across a banner. Welcome to Earth Global Food Festival. Back on Earth, Mateo Ramirez was having the least normal week of his life. He stood in the same parking lot where everything had begun, now transformed into an international gathering ground. Tents from dozens of countries formed a ring around a central stage. Security was present but relaxed. Scientists mingled with street vendors. Cameras broadcast the event across every major network on the planet. And floating gently above it all hovered a Virellian observation platform shaped like a luminous silver petal. Mateo adjusted his apron, newly embroidered with both the Mexican flag and a small Virelian star symbol. You ready for round 2? Asked Asisha Rahman, a chef from Morocco setting up beside him with trays of couscous and tagine. Mateo exhaled. I fed 3 alien kids a burrito. How did that turn into hosting Earth's first interstellar potluck? Asisha grinned. Because you didn't panic. A soft hum filled the air. The Virelian platform descended. This time, it wasn't just the cubs. Dozens of Virellians emerged, taller, more composed, wearing shimmering environmental sashes that adjusted atmosphere and gravity around them. At their center walked Thierry, practically vibrating with excitement. Human Mateo, she chirped, running forward. Mateo knelt automatically. Hey, superstar. She presented something carefully held in both claws. It was a container, made of a translucent crystal-like material, glowing faintly from within. We have prepared a traditional Virelian nourishment sphere, Thierry announced proudly. In your honor. Mateo looked up at Commander Yevon. Is it safe? He asked cautiously. Yevon inclined his head. Perfectly. Mildly luminous, but safe. Mateo nodded. All right then. Trade? He handed her a freshly wrapped burrito. She handed him the glowing sphere. Cameras flashed. Humanity and Virellia had just exchanged their first mutual meal. The sphere tasted like nothing Mateo had ever experienced. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't savory. It was harmonic. Flavors unfolded in layers cool and warm at once, like mint and sunlight blended together. It felt less like chewing and more like absorbing. Mateo's eyes widened. Okay, he said slowly. That's amazing. The nearby crowd exhaled in relief. Then something beautiful happened. A Japanese chef offered sushi to a curious Virelian scientist. An Italian grandmother explained pasta to a being who communicated in musical tones. A Nigerian vendor laughed as a Virelian attempted badly to mimic the spice tolerance of jollof rice. Children approached without fear. The Virelian cubs approached without hesitation. No one had instructed this. No treaty had demanded it. It simply unfolded. But not everyone was comfortable. In a control room several miles away, General Markov watched the live broadcast with folded arms. This is reckless, he muttered. We know nothing about their long-term intentions. A young analyst beside him hesitated. Sir, with respect? They brought their children first, Markov frowned. The analyst continued, Predators don't lead with their young. Markov looked back at the screen. On it, Thierry was attempting to teach a group of human kids how to pronounce her species' word for gratitude. It sounded like wind chimes colliding with laughter. The children were trying their best. And failing spectacularly. Markov's jaw tightened. Keep monitoring, he said quietly. As evening fell, lights illuminated the festival grounds. Commander Yevon stood beside Mateo again, observing. You risked much, Yevon said. Your leaders are divided, Mateo nodded. Yeah, we are. Happens a lot. Why continue? Yevon asked. Mateo thought for a moment. Then he gestured toward the crowd. Because they're curious, he said. And so are we. Yevon studied the humans laughing, sharing plates, explaining flavors with animated hands. On Virellia, he said slowly, we believe technological advancement defined readiness for contact. And now? Mateo asked. Yevon's 4 eyes reflected the festival lights. Now I believe it may be generosity. Near the central stage, a small incident nearly shattered everything. A loud pop echoed from a malfunctioning generator. Smoke rose sharply. Several humans ducked instinctively. 2 Virellian guards shifted into defensive posture, energy fields flickering. Tension spiked. For half a heartbeat, the fragile bridge trembled. Then, Thierry sneezed. It was high-pitched and unexpectedly adorable. The nearest human child burst into giggles. The laughter spread like wildfire. The Virellian guards hesitated. Then, slowly, powered down. The generator was fixed within minutes. The moment passed. But everyone had felt it, the thin line between fear and trust. And how easily it could tip. Later that night, as the festival wound down, Commander Yevon addressed both species from the stage. Today, he began, voice amplified gently through translators, we witnessed something rare in the cosmos. He gestured toward the shared tables. Many civilizations greet the unknown with suspicion, with containment, with force. He looked toward Mateo. Humanity greeted us with food. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. But more importantly, Yevon continued, they greeted us without demanding superiority. He turned slightly, indicating the Virellians. And we responded not with analysis alone, but with participation. He paused. The universe is vast. It is often cold. But today, on this small world, it was warm. Applause rose, not coordinated, not rehearsed, but genuine. Mateo leaned toward Thierry. So, he whispered, what do you think? Thierry looked out over the lights, the mingling species, the shared recipes scribbled across datapads and napkins alike. I think, she said softly, this is only the appetizer. High above Earth, Virellian starships adjusted their orbit, not in preparation for conquest, but for extended stay. And in kitchens across the planet, humans experimented late into the night. Teriyaki burritos, tandoori tacos, sushi with glowing Virellian garnish after thorough testing. And somewhere in San Esperanza, a food truck added a new item to its menu, the galactic special 2 worlds. 1 tortilla, because humanity had done what it always did best. Faced with the unknown, it set the table. 3 months after the galactic potluck, Earth had a new problem. Not fear, not invasion, demand. The line outside El Sol Supremo now stretched around 3 city blocks. Humans waited. Virellians hovered politely. A small sign hung from Mateo's food truck. Please be patient. Interstellar diplomacy takes time. Mateo wiped sweat from his forehead. I need a bigger grill, he muttered. You need a supply chain, replied Asia, who now ran a neighboring fusion stall called Starlight Tajin. Above them, a Virellian shuttle descended carefully between skyscrapers, adjusting gravity fields so street signs wouldn't rattle. From it emerged a delegation wearing sleek silver sashes, the scientific cohort. And at their center was Thierry, holding something that looked suspiciously like a presentation tablet. Human Mateo. She called happily. He grinned. Hey, Professor. She puffed up proudly at the title. We have completed analysis of Earth culinary framework, she announced. Oh, no, Mateo said playfully. That sounds official. It is, Kova added, stepping forward with dignified calm. And we have identified a problem. The surrounding humans stiffened slightly. Mateo crossed his arms. Okay, what kind of problem? Thierry lifted the tablet. A holographic map of Earth flickered to life. Highlighted in glowing gold were thousands of small dots. Food desserts, she said quietly. The mood shifted. The Virellians had studied humanity the way they studied stars' patterns, distributions, energy flow. They noticed something humans had long known but struggled to solve. Entire regions where fresh, nourishing food was scarce. It is illogical, said one Virellian scientist gently. Your planet produces abundance, yet many lack access. Mateo's smile faded. Yeah, he said softly, we know. Commander Yevon stepped forward. On Virellia, he said, nutrient distribution is considered a fundamental stability index. A civilization that cannot feed all its young weakens itself. General Markov, present this time in person, crossed his arms. You're saying we're unstable? Yevon met his gaze calmly. I'm saying you are capable of more. Silence hung in the air. Thierry stepped closer to Matteo. We wish to help, she said. The proposal stunned the world. Using Virellian orbital agriculture technology, compact atmospheric cultivators, capable of growing fresh produce in harsh environments, they could establish local food hubs in underserved regions, not as rulers, not as owners, as partners. But opposition rose quickly. Talk shows flared with debate. They feed us now. What do they want later? Dependency leads to control. What if it's long-term genetic manipulation? Matteo watched one of these broadcasts from his truck, jaw tight. Thierry sat beside him, unusually quiet. Are we causing harm? She asked softly. Matteo sighed. No, he said. But change scares people, even if the change is nourishment. Especially then. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A drought-stricken farming town in northern Mexico volunteered first. We've got nothing left to lose, the mayor said during a global stream. If they can grow crops in orbit, maybe they can help us grow them here. Within days, a Virellian cultivator descended. It wasn't flashy, no glowing beams of dominance. Just a sleek silver structure about the size of a shipping container. Inside, microclimate fields balanced humidity, nutrients, and light at microscopic precision. Within a week, green shoots emerged from soil long considered barren. Within 2, tomatoes ripened. Leafy greens unfurled. Children who had never tasted fresh spinach without a long supply chain delay bit into crisp leaves grown in their own town. The footage went viral, not because it was alien technology, but because of a little girl holding up a cucumber like it was treasure. Thierry watched the clip on repeat. She is smiling, she whispered. Matteo nodded. Yeah. Back at the UN, debates shifted tone. General Markov stood before an assembly of world leaders. We prepared for invasion, he admitted. Instead, we were offered irrigation. He paused. That does not remove the need for caution. But it demands recognition. One by one, nations voted to approve a joint Earth-Virelia agricultural initiative. The agreement was simple: shared knowledge, shared oversight, full transparency, no exclusivity, no military application, and every facility would be co-managed by local communities. When the vote passed, applause echoed through the chamber. But the real celebration happened far from microphones, in kitchens, in small towns, in neighborhoods that suddenly had options. Months later, Matteo visited one of the new food hubs. The once empty lot now held rows of vibrant crops beneath a shimmering atmospheric dome. Thierry walked beside him, gazing at the humans tending plants. You are not a perfect species, she said thoughtfully. Matteo laughed. Big understatement, but, she continued, you adapt rapidly. When presented with possibility, you argue. Then build. Yeah, he said. That's kinda our thing. A teenage boy approached them, holding a basket of freshly picked peppers. You're the burrito guy, right? He asked Matteo. That's me. The boy turned to Thierry. And you're the alien who likes guacamole. Thierry beamed. Yes. The boy handed them both a pepper. First harvest, he said proudly. Thanks. Thierry held the pepper carefully, not analyzing, not scanning, just holding it. This, she said softly, is better than first contact. That night, Commander Yevon recorded a transmission to the Virellian Council. Humanity remains chaotic, he reported. Emotionally volatile, politically fragmented. He paused, watching a live feed of volunteers distributing fresh produce. But they are uniquely responsive to hope. He folded his hands. We came prepared to evaluate a species. He looked toward Earth's glowing curve below. Instead, we are growing with them. Back in San Esperanza, Matteo updated his menu again. Beneath the Galactic Special, he added a new line, Harvest Burrito. Ingredients grown through human-Virellian partnership business doubled. But more importantly, so did conversations. Not about fear, not about dominance, but about possibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low and stars blinked into view, Thierry sat on the roof of the food truck. You know, she said, staring upward. When we first arrived, we thought we were discovering Earth. Mateo climbed up beside her. And now? She pointed at the stars. I think we're discovering what two species can become. Mateo followed her gaze. Above them, Virellian ships glimmered peacefully in orbit, not looming, not threatening, just present. Humanity had not conquered the stars. It had shared a meal with them, and somehow that was enough to begin, to be continued. For decades we looked to the stars and asked, are we alone? Then the Virellians arrived, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. They were beings of light and logic, their forms shimmering with a wisdom that spanned millennia. We taught them about art, about passion, about the beautiful chaos of human emotion. They, in turn, shared their knowledge of the universe's intricate laws, helping us leapfrog centuries of technological development. Our worlds, Earth and Virellia Prime, became twin jewels in the cosmic dark, symbols of an unprecedented alliance. We built star lanes between our systems, traded goods and ideas, and our children grew up knowing the friendly, ethereal glow of a Virellian in their skies was a sign of peace. This was our golden age, a time of unparalleled cooperation. We believed our combined strength made us invincible. We were wrong. The first sign of trouble wasn't a declaration of war, but a deafening silence. The outer listening posts, our ears to the void, went dark one by one. Then, a vessel, scarred and broken, limped back to our space. It was a joint human-Virellian exploration ship. Its final message was a single, terrifying word, broadcast on all frequencies before the ship tore it apart. Carthan. The name was a phantom from Virellian history, a species so ruthless, so utterly dedicated to consumption, that they were thought to be a myth, a boogeyman to scare young Virellians. But the myth was real, and it was coming for us. The Carthane fleet was a horror of jagged metal and raw, destructive energy. Their ships weren't built. They were grown like cancerous tumors on the fabric of space. They didn't communicate, they didn't negotiate. They simply consumed, stripping worlds of their resources, their life, their very atoms, leaving nothing but cold, dead rock behind. Their advance was relentless, a plague sweeping through the galaxy. Star systems that had shone brightly for eons were snuffed out in mere days. The joint council of Earth and Virellia Prime watched in grim silence as the holographic map of the galaxy turned red, sector by sector, the color of blood and despair. Fear, an emotion we thought we had mastered, began to creep back into our hearts. The initial battles were a slaughter. Our sleek, elegant ships, marvels of human and Virellian engineering, were swatted aside like flies. The Carthane's tactics were brutal and unpredictable. They didn't fight with strategy. They fought with rage. Their swarms of smaller fighters moved like a hive mind, a single furious entity. For every one of their ships we destroyed, 10 more would take its place. Our combined fleet, the pride of two species, was being bled dry. Morale plummeted. On Earth, cities were filled with terrified citizens. On Virellia Prime, the shimmering forms of the Virellians flickered with anxiety. The alliance, forged in peace, was now being tested by the fires of total war, and it was beginning to crack. Doubt began to poison the council chambers. Human generals argued for a retreat to fortify the Sol system and abandon our Virellian allies to their fate. Some Virellian elders whispered of a different kind of retreat, a phase shift of their entire planet into another dimension, leaving humanity to face the Carthane alone. The unity we had cherished was crumbling under the immense pressure. It seemed our story, the great saga of two species coming together, would end in a bitter divorce right before our mutual annihilation. The Carthane weren't just destroying our ships. They were destroying our hope, our trust, the very foundation of our bond. It was in our darkest hour that a young Virellian diplomat named Lyra and a grizzled human admiral, Marcus Thorne, stood before the fractured council. Lyra's voice, usually a melodic chime, was firm. She reminded her people that humanity had taught them the value of fighting for something beyond logic, for a home, for a future. Admiral Thorne, a man who had seen the worst of the fighting, spoke not of tactics, but of sacrifice. He reminded the humans that the Virellians had gifted them the stars, and abandoning them now would be a betrayal of everything we had become. He declared, "We were strong when we stood together. We are nothing if we fall apart. We will not give them two broken peoples to consume. We will give them one unbreakable shield." His words and Lyra's plea sparked a change. The plan they proposed was insane, a desperate final gamble. It was called Operation Final Stand. It wasn't a plan of attack or even defense. It was a statement. We would gather every ship we had left, from the mightiest dreadnought to the smallest civilian transport. We would form a single, unbroken line in front of both Earth and Virellia Prime. We would not fire a single shot. We would simply stand our ground together. We would broadcast a single message on all frequencies, a message not for the Carthane, but for ourselves, and for the universe to witness. The message was the combined declaration of our two species, a testament to our unity, our history, our shared dreams. As the monstrous Carthane fleet arrived, they saw it. A line of ships stretching farther than their sensors could reach. Human vessels, solid and gray, stood side by side with the glowing, crystalline ships of the Virellians. In the middle of the formation, unarmed, sat the diplomatic vessel where the alliance was first signed. The Carthane swarms paused. For the first time they encountered something they didn't understand. It wasn't a fleet arranged for battle. It was a wall. A wall made not of metal or energy shields, but of pure, unyielding resolve. They saw two species ready to die as one rather than live apart. They saw strength that couldn't be measured in firepower. The lead Carthane vessel, a behemoth the size of a moon, slowly came to a halt. The universe held its breath. Then, without a sound, the Carthane fleet began to turn. They didn't retreat in a panic. They simply left. They disengaged, turned their jagged ships around, and vanished back into the void from which they came. They had conquered star systems with brute force, but they were turned back by a display of spirit. They understood destruction, but they did not understand sacrifice. They could break a planet, but they could not break a promise. In the aftermath, a stunned silence hung over the combined fleet. Then, cheers erupted. Cheers from human throats, and joyous light pulses from Virelian forms. We hadn't won a battle. We had affirmed an identity. We learned that true strength isn't just about advanced weapons or bigger ships. It's about the bonds we forge, the values we share, and the willingness to stand for something greater than ourselves, even in the face of oblivion. The Carthane threat had pushed us to the brink, but in doing so, they had forged our alliance into something unbreakable. Our two worlds, once just allies, were now family, bound by the shared memory of the day we stared into the abyss together and chose not to blink. The stars seemed a little brighter that night. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of unity against the odds, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from across the cosmos. We'll see you in the next one.